Hello, hello. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Make sure everything is working correctly. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hey, it's Oza. Hot in off the trails of Azeroth. Hey, it's Quinn. Hi, Quinn. Hooray. Come on in, y'all. Come on in. I think we are probably going to get started. Hello! Gutes Walpurgisnacht! Ah! Absolutely. Wie geht's? Absolutely. We will probably get started with this class. Maybe at 7:05. I might wait until 7:10 just to give people a moment to get in, make sure that the links are working and all that BS. So take the opportunity. Hello, Eva. Nice to see you. Um, uh, Take the opportunity to get yourself comfy. Go grab a glass of something delicious. If you partake, maybe grab a little smoky smoke. Light a candle, light a little incense. Especially if you're home alone. Especially, right? Like, charity starts at home. We want to make things nice right here and then for everybody else. So, get yourself cozy, get yourself comfy. Maybe grab a journal and a pen, something to write on. If you want, one of the things that I've done for this class that's a little bit different is down below in the description. You will see a link for the individual PDF for this class. So you can actually work along with me if you want to. And in the future, I may also make this big giant book for sale to the public. This was just for people who bought tickets for the entire year, but that, of course, was when we were still on Earth. And we're not there anymore. We actually are on Earth. This is a very real human thing for us to be dealing with right now. We just need to deal with it. We need to figure it out. And that's not necessarily going to be easy. I don't mean to wipe that off the table as, oh, just figure it out. It's just a pandemic. Get your shit together. I have surely said that to myself a few times, but it's actually not true. Anyways, this big old book, this big spiral bound book, was only available for students, people that bought the entire year class. I may make this available for everybody. I'm not sure. But in the meantime, like I said, in the description below, you can find a link to buy the PDF for just this book. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Also, hello hair, hello roots. That's some pandemic business right there, isn't it? But also I was taking my hair down to put it back up, and I was like, I'm not depriving the people of this glorious mane. Are you kidding me? Like, come on, look at this. It's good. It's good this year. Just going through my notes. Entertain yourselves. Talk amongst yourselves. We actually are. I'm pretty much ready to go. Except for that it took me forever to figure out the technical bullshit of getting this figured out. So I apologize to all of the people that thought this class was going to be on the 19th and then the 23rd and like all the other dates that I listed. These were all dates that I assumed I would be able to get my shit together by, but I was wrong. But today at 3:33, it all dialed in. So, is there anything I really need out of this? So maybe I just need the calendar. What you will get if you grab the PDF is all of the information that we're going to talk about tonight and things that we will not have time to get to tonight. And in the back, you get a big 7 or 8 week. Is it 8 this time? Yeah, it's 8 for this season because Beltane is a big season. It's long. You will get an 8-week calendar that has past and present holidays from all over the planet that are all aligned with Beltane season vibes in one way or another, as well as astronomical events that are happening, which we will look at some of that stuff tonight. So some of the information that's here in the calendar you'll get tonight, but not all of it, because it's a lot. I mean, this individual calendar has about 130 holidays on it all over the planet in all these different belief systems that recognize these energies. So we'll wait just a moment more. I know somebody's water is just about to boil for their pot of tea, so I'll wait. We'll wait a moment more. One of the things that I know my repeat live class students are missing, I'm assuming anyways, are the smells of the classes. So I am burning tonight some Fred Soul. We love Fred Soul. They are an American brand from New Mexico, I believe. And they've been making incense since the 70s. It's activated charcoal and all essential oils on most of their scents. They claim all essential oils on all of them. I'm a little skeptical on some, but it's a big old thick stick of incense. You can actually see the frankincense resin on the outside, and nothing smells like it. Nothing in the world smells as good as this stuff. It's incredible. And what we're burning tonight is the one I always burn at my Beltane classes, which is the frankincense, rose, and jasmine combination, because it really brings in a lot of the energies that we are working with at this time of year. And then I also have my seasonal sprays that I make. I have a giant box of these just sitting around, which is kind of a bummer, but maybe someday I'll be able to sell these to you guys. But woo! And nobody gets to know what's in the seasonal sprays. It's my special blend. Smell like me. Mm-hmm. Or don't. Maybe take a shower. All right, it's 7:08. We are just about to begin. And let's see. Let's start. First off, let's start. And then I want to start with a quote here. But first, if you haven't already, let me invite you to just settle in to this moment. There is a lot of tension and a lot of anxiety in the world right now, and I want to invite you to just take some nice, natural, deep breaths at your own pace, in through your nose and out through your mouth. If you want to do a count during that and have them be balanced, whatever. But what I really want to encourage you to do is to come and be here. Be in this space. Be in your body. Be in this room. Look around yourself. Look at the light. Look at the furniture. Look at the other people or animals that might be with you. Look at the plants if there are other sentient beings with you. And just be here. Don't be over there. Don't be yesterday. Don't be tomorrow. Don't be later this evening. Just be right here. This 2 hours is for you. This is some of the service that I can provide in the midst of what is happening, is to try to give you some seasonal rhythm, and some context for what it is that we are experiencing as a species, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere. So this chunk of time is for you. Use it however you would like. If you want to study and take notes, you're welcome to. If you want to lay back and close your eyes and just listen to me talk about stuff, that's fine too. Whatever you want. It's for you. So enjoy yourself, be here, and thank you for joining me, and thanks for joining all of us. And here we go. Happy Beltane. Okay, so I'd like to start with a very short quote from a classic Taurus Gemini cusp person who I believe really embodies the spirit of Beltane season, and that is Joan of Arc. And the quote is, "I am not afraid. I was born to do this." And I love that audacity. I love that strength, that certainty, and that courage. And that is a lot of the energy that we are working with here in Beltane season. Audacity, bravery, being courageous, pushing ourselves into the world, and knowing that this is a part of our birthright, if you want to use a phrase like that. Knowing that this is a part of the meaning of your life. Having been born in this time, in this place, here we are. Okay, so let's talk about Beltane. The other thing that I usually say at the beginning of the Beltane classes is, let's just get butt naked and fuck. Sorry if there's any kids in the room. But you brought a kid to a Beltane class. Okay. So, Beltane. This is a holiday that is celebrated by modern pagans and was celebrated by ancient pagans, and there have been a variety of different rituals and festivals and rites associated with this time of year, going back several thousand years into what we would consider prehistory or unrecorded history. So I sometimes think of the holidays as like a bell. And when we ring this bell, it's a sound that echoes real far through time. Okay. Traditionally, this is a holiday that is celebrated on the eve of April 30th, going into the morning, afternoon, and night of May 1st. So we start the holiday the night before, if you want, or at sundown is when the festival or the holiday would begin. So sundown on April 30th, and then all the way through May 1st. Because witches love to party. So why would you stop at just 12 hours when you could go a full 36? Okay. So the main themes of this holiday... Oh, I guess I should say this too. Welcome to my classes. I go on tangents. This is one of the holidays. There's 8 main Sabbats in the Wheel of the Year, and this is one of the holidays that is pretty much stuck to these days. Now, there's a caveat to that in that the holidays have moved throughout time and they have been adjusted slightly here or there per culture and per era, yada yada. But in general, this is not thought of as a moving holiday. It's pretty much always going to be April 30th and May 1st, whatever April 30th is for the calendar that you are looking at. Versus solar-oriented holidays like the equinoxes or the solstices or solstice. Those holidays totally move because they are dictated by the movement of the sun. And the sun doesn't care what number we have given to whatever day. The sun's like, I don't give a shit. I'm at this degree. Actually, we, the Earth, we are in a particular degree in our orbit around the sun, and that marks the solstices and the equinoxes. But Beltane is considered one of the greater Sabbats. It's called also a cross-quarter holiday. There are lesser Sabbats and greater Sabbats, shade, but Beltane is in the family in the 4-pack of the greater Sabbats or the cross-quarter holidays. And these Sabbats were really considered to be a big deal. In modern paganism, I think all of the Sabbats kind of weigh the same. They all have equal importance. You may or may not observe them all, but they all are sort of treated as being as important as each other. But when we look back through time, we see groups like the Celts, for example, and that's, again, caveat. We're talking about a big old group of people over a large span of time when we say the word Celts. But ancient Western European pagans celebrated Samhain and Beltane. That was it. They celebrated what we think Halloween, right? Samhain and Beltane. Those were the two holidays. They maybe did random things because of traveling visitors and merchants and whatnot, bringing in influence of other holidays. But those were the two. Summer, winter. Don't care about anything else in between. Typical Celts, like let's paint ourselves blue, get super lit on whatever we're doing, drinking, mushrooms, whatever. And, two holidays. Nobody needs to keep track of anything else. So Beltane, again, one of the ones that's big, big, big. This is the holiday that wherever you are in the Northern Hemisphere, this is kicking off the bright half of the year, the solar half of the year, the hot half of the year. No matter where you are in the Northern Hemisphere between the equator and the North Pole, by the time we hit Beltane, things have begun to defrost, things have begun to bloom, things have begun to grow, animals have begun to breed and do their thing. So it's kind of unquestionably spring into summer by the time we hit Beltane. Again, no matter where you are in the Northern Hemisphere, the weather has changed enough. Okay, so what do we do at Beltane? Well, TLDR, if you don't have time, we just fucking set stuff on fire. All right, so thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Okay. What do we do at Beltane? Let's talk about it. This is what we do at Beltane. We work with... Oops, that's not right. Oh my god, I'm screwing up my own graphics. We're so close. Don't look at any of this. It's all... There we go. Witches work. What do we do at Beltane? We work with elements of fertility, bringing polarities together, rites of passage, divination, and protection. And in this, we've got some pretty potent, some pretty heady stuff in this collection, right? So let's talk about it. Fertility. Now, a lot of folks hear the word fertility and they cringe. They're like, oh, if you are a person with a womb, it might seize up. Like, no, please. And that's fair. That's completely reasonable. But what we're really talking about when we're talking about fertility is we're talking about abundance. We're talking about the ability to make things grow and the ability ultimately to produce. Because that's where we're ultimately headed in the Wheel of the Year, is toward production, toward result. And so Beltane is our season where we really begin to wake up the machinery of producing results here on the physical plane. And that starts with our ability to make stuff happen, to be able to combine, like we said, opposing polarities, those opposing forces, by bringing those polarities together, we have fruition. We have union of opposites that ultimately results in a third thing. And of course, the easiest description of that, or the easiest metaphor for that, would be sex. Having two people get together and ultimately have a third thing produced from that. Goddess bless, that's not the only reason for sex, but it's one of the things that happens when you have sex between two people. Some people it will result in a baby, a flesh baby, an actual human. Who knew? But that doesn't have to be the only thing that is produced by sexual intercourse between two or more humans. Lots of stuff can come from that. Energy can come from that. Idea, willpower can come from that. Blessings, protection, like all kinds of really cool stuff that we can use magically can come from the energy of sex and the idea of bringing polarities together in union. So we know that this is going to be a holiday that speaks a little bit to extremes in that sense, because again, we're bringing the polarities together. So fertility is really this idea of opening up to the idea of connectivity. And again, our most mundane and our most traditional ways that we think about this in Beltane season is sex and sexual activity. But good luck with that right now during COVID. It's COVID season. It's not Beltane season. So it may be a little difficult to get together with people during this time period. But there are also asexual and aromantic folks out there that are not interested in working with that metaphor in that modality. So it's really important to just bring yourself into the sense of fertility being me preparing myself or preparing my environment or preparing my tools for union with something or someone or someone's, because hey, freaky Seattle, to ultimately result in a thing. That's the point of fertility, is I'm trying to make myself open to receive and be able to hold something and then ultimately produce it. That's what's up. So when we say the word fertility, don't get too freaked out. I'm not trying to get everybody pregnant here. Like, not at all. But I do want you to find the power within yourself to open up and be able to come into union with things that are opposite you, a pole from you, and then have union with that thing to be able to produce a result. Because that's really what we're doing here in Beltane season. That's what's up. Okay, so fertility. And then we talked about our next one there on the list is bringing polarities together. And that is probably my very polite way of saying sex, again. So, what I have listed here, sexuality, but specifically union of energies. And that word union is very, very important at Beltane season. It really ties into a lot of our Taurian imagery that we're working with for the astrologers out there in the crowd. Union. Okay. What else do we have? Rites of passage. Okay, with all this sex going on, somebody's growing up. So whether, again, people are engaging in any kind of sexual or sensual activities, not the most important thing, but this is also a time period that we are recognizing that people have grown or changed or shifted their responsibility settings from this place to something more complicated, something more responsible, something older, more mature, more adult, whatever. In this, there are a couple different holidays in the wheel that do recognize initiatory rites, or they are a great time for a rite of passage or a rite of initiation. Springtime generally tends to focus on young people or youthful people. However, there are lots of people in the West that have never experienced a rite of passage at all for any reason. And there are a ton of reasons why you might work with a rite of passage. Perhaps you started having a menses cycle. Perhaps you stopped having a menses cycle. Perhaps you started growing hair where you've never grown hair before. Perhaps you are going through a transition and you have, in your mind really changed from one form into the next version of yourself that you were aiming for. That, in my opinion, should be recognized and ritualized, and really sort of market for yourself, market for your community. Rites of passage are ways that we acknowledge to ourselves, I used to be this, but I have changed, and I have grown into this thing now. I'm different than I was before. But it's also a way for our community to recognize that, or be encouraged to recognize it. Sometimes we need to go through a rite of passage so that everybody else knows that we have changed and turned into this new thing or this new version of what we've been doing. But in my opinion, the rite of passage is ultimately really for yourself. And it doesn't prove anything. It doesn't make something happen. It's an acknowledgement that it has happened. Because we are all aging, we're all changing all the time. And, you know, I mean, a birthday party is a classic rite of passage, right? You're different. You've gone through the gate of, you know, 29. No, I'm in my 40s, bitch, and I've earned every year of it. But my point being that in the West, we really don't have anything kind of built into our society other than, oh my God, you're 18. You can go fight in a war now. That's exciting. Oh, you're 21. Now you can drink. And then it just sort of stops after that. We don't really talk about it until, you know, retirement age, basically. And there's so many other things in our lives to celebrate and specifically to acknowledge. So Beltane is a fantastic time for rites of passage. We are fully leaving our old self that we were in the last energetic cycle that ended at the end of winter. We are fully leaving that behind. We have left the transitionary period out of winter into spring that we experience in Ostara season. And now we are full on into whatever this new energetic cycle is going to be for this coming year. And so we want to acknowledge that. And we want to say, this is me, but this is the new time around. This is the new spin on the spiral. So let's pop a bottle about it and get to it. Okay. Other stuff that we are doing at this time of year. Divination and protection. Okay. So, with all of this sexy bullshit that's going on, and all of these rites of passage, and all of this initiatory whatnottery, it is very natural that you will see, and as we are heading into, like I said, full on heading into the new energetic stream that we are in, completely reasonable, completely normal, to call together the forces and do a little divination and ask for some help, ask for some guidance, ask for some clarity. We might work with divinatory systems to find out where best would it be for me to plant seeds and begin to work on projects going forward. All kinds of stuff, really. Anything that you have a question about going forward with this next chunk of the year or the rest of the year in entirety, this is a great time to ask those questions. And divination is all of those different systems that are out there. Tarot, astrology, dice, runes, the I Ching, I mean, dowsing, there's a million different forms of bones, shells. There are a ton of divinatory systems out there. And it is a great time, if you don't practice any of this stuff, but you are intrigued by it, it is a fantastic time to do a little experimenting on your own. Again, whatever feels safe for you, whatever feels right for you. But if you have a tarot deck at home, now might be a really fantastic time to start doing a card a day pull. If you practice astrology, you might pick a nice fast-moving planet like Mercury or Venus because it's connected to Taurus and we're in Taurus season, and kind of read about that planet a little bit. Maybe look it up in your chart and see what those planets are doing this year and where they're going to be moving through your chart. And and if that's confusing for you, don't worry about it. But if you are a person that practices astrology, you understand what I'm talking about. And these are ways that you can divine. You can look into the future, or you can get a broader sense of the present. But there are, like I said, a million trillion different forms of divination. Staring at a candle flame, watching the ripples on the surface of water. It's endless. And these are all places where we can practice some deep breathing, some meditation, and then just kind of let the images come to you, let the messages come to you. Again, if you're doing this by yourself and you're experimenting with these things, don't judge what's happening, just witness it. You might hear things, you might smell things, you might pick something up with your other five senses. You might have a gut feeling about something. Memories may come flooding back from something that you're like, I haven't thought about that in 20 years. What the heck? Journal it, write it all down, especially the stuff that doesn't make sense. And then you can say, I'm a witch and I'm doing divination. Because that's really the whole point, is just to be able to Instagram about it. I'm kidding. Okay. So divination, very, very potent at this time of year and very timely at this time of year, because again, we're about to step into the new energetic, or we are stepping full on into the new energetic cycle. We're not about to, we are really there now. And this is just a great way to kind of get a heads up. What am I doing this year? Where am I headed? Are there any obstacles that I need to be aware of, that I will be able to do something about? And if I can't do something about them, how do I deal with them in a healthy way? Are there any bonuses, any gifts, any presents, any surprises in the universe out there waiting for me? And how might I, best make use of them for myself and for my community? All of that good stuff is what we can cover in divinatory practices. Very potent at this time of year. And protection. Because again, we are going into the high part of the year. We're going into the hot and the solar part of the year. And there's a lot of stuff metaphorically and physically that changes because of that. Think about who you are and how you live in the heart of January, right? It's cold, it's wet, you might be stiff and kind of achy because it's cold and wet. It's dark, so you're not getting a lot of sunlight every day, so your serotonin levels are probably pretty low. And everybody's fine sleeping 12 hours a day, eating a bowl of stew, kind of, like grumping at somebody in text one time, and then that's plenty of activity for the day, thanks. And then think of yourself on the opposite end and how you are in August, right? I'll sleep outside in the park, right? Clothing, who needs it? Our bodies feel beautiful and great, whether, forget about aesthetics. I'm just saying, like, we feel wonderful because the sun is warm and the air smells wonderful and everything is blooming and growing and vibrant around us. And we're really feeling full of life. Beltane is the halfway point in between those things, but we're headed towards the high part of that cycle. And so protection comes in because we're about to go engage in some activities that we haven't for the last 6 months. We're about to go do some things, hang out with some people, go to some places, maybe not hang out with people, but go to some places and do some things and engage in activities that we really haven't for the last 6 months. And so we want to just clear the way and make sure that everything is nice. Divinatory practices and protection practices are some of those rituals that connect back to the most ancient recorded versions of Beltane-like pagan holidays and pagan festivals. So it really is sort of embedded in the idea of, I'm about to leave the metaphor that I always think of is Beltane is the gate that separates my yard from the rest of the world. And I'm about to go through that gate and go out into the rest of the world. So I'm going to check my map. That's my divination. And then I'm also going to look in my bag and make sure that I've got extra money for the bus, and that maybe I've got some hand sanitizer these days, a little thieves spray, maybe a glove and a mask. Like, let's just go to that party. And that's my protection, right? I'm gonna, like, I can only look out into the future so much. I can only know so much about what's coming. But that then allows me to prepare for it, and that's my protection stuff. And there's also some really classic or traditional protection rituals that happen during this time. They pretty much all have to do with fire, which is fantastic. Okay, so is there anything else I want to talk about witches' work? Spirit work. There is a little bit of harvest happening at this time of year, especially in the ancient world, and especially places that are very, very close to the equator. They have their growth season during winter, and they harvest in spring, and then it's super hot and dried out all during summer, and they pray for rain, which eventually comes in fall, and then in late fall, winter, the growth cycle starts again. But yeah, I'd say the only other thing that we really are working with at this time of year, and I kind of have covered this, is the return of the passion and the vitality that we work with in summer. So again, like I said, bringing yourself into where and who you are in January, and then bringing yourself into where and who you are in August, and knowing we are at the halfway point between those two things, ish, but we are inclining or ascending towards that high peak. Okay. So we have a ton of information with this holiday. Some other names that go with this holiday are May Day. This is an ancient Northern Hemisphere spring festival celebrated by dozens of cultures. Also, May Day is the name for International Workers' Day. General strike, anyone? I'm dead serious. Okay, moving on. Another name for this holiday is Hexennacht. And this refers to one of the classic names for this, which is Witches' Night, and probably more commonly known as Walpurgisnacht, which that name Walpurgisnacht, what you are saying in German, forgive me, anybody out there that actually speaks German, because my 8th grade German fails me frequently. What we're saying is Walpurgis Night. Nacht, 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 means night in German. And so what we're saying is Walpurgis Night, or the Night of Walpurga. And Walpurga is a Teutonic witch mother goddess. And so because this was one of the two main great holidays that pagans were celebrating, this was sort of like, here come the witches. They're coming out of their huts. They're getting on their brooms, and they are flying through the sky tonight because the weather is nice, and it's a great time to go harvest herbs. And you don't want to miss young nettle season, so we got to get out there and get it done. Walburga, Burga, is a really fantastic archetype. They are really incredible, and I would definitely recommend doing a little research on them if you are feeling a pull in your gut toward that character. But that's that name, Hexennacht, or like I said, Walpurgisnacht. Colin Mai is the Welsh name for this holiday, and it simply means the calends of May. And anytime we see a word like calends, we know that there's probably a little bit of Roman influence there. So not to say that the Welsh learned about this holiday from the Romans, but I would expect that their name for it is a leftover from Roman occupation of Western Europe. Colonizers. And it's really normal with the Welsh pagan holidays that they're actually named the start of the month. So it'll be, I don't remember any of the other ones, but it'll be like the beginning of August is the name of Lunasod, rather than Lunasod or what have you. It's the beginning of August is the name for the holiday, Welsh. All right. Some alternative spellings for this are, again, if there's anybody that actually speaks these languages, I wholeheartedly apologize. Please note my enthusiasm and then send me help on how to pronounce these words correctly. Lal Beltane, which is the Irish pronunciation, Liap Beltane, which is the Scottish, and this is, as I said, the official start of summer for the Celtic people or people in the Celtic lands. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that people were doing and some of the really important things of Beltane. Because why not, right? It's on the flyer, so I might as well mention it. Okay. So the big stuff that we're talking about here is, as I said at the beginning of the class, sex and sexuality and sensuality, and combining our forces with those things that appear opposite to us to produce a third thing, a result, a pathway, a something. Okay. And so this really speaks closely to the Wiccan or pagan practice of the Great Rite, which is celebrated or worked symbolically and literally. And the Great Rite is the union between goddess energy and god energy. Tangent coming up. And in Wiccan practice or pagan practices, we will see the leaders of the coven, if it is a coven-oriented practice, perform the Great Rite, again, as I said, either metaphorically or literally. And when it's metaphorical, one person will hold a chalice and one person will hold a knife, and they put the knife into the chalice, and it is literally a symbolic representation of the union of opposites. We have the chalice and we have the blade, and it's coming in. And it's a very simple and straightforward metaphor for, again, a type of sex that some humans have on Earth, but really it's the metaphor for one person being the receiver of energy and one person being the sender of energy. And those roles can be interchanged. It doesn't have to be one person doing one thing all the time. In fact, I think magic is more potent when we all take turns being the senders and the receivers. If you know, you know. But the ancient word that we use for the Great Rite is hieros gamos, which means sacred sex, sacred games, sacred rites, sacred union. And hieros gamos is an important word for us because we are going to work with an archetype that we'll talk about a little bit later in class, that their name starts with hiero. And so we already have this interesting connection going on here. Okay. One of the other big things that happens at this time of year when we're talking about all that fertility stuff is, with hieros gamos, with the Great Rite, is greenwood marriages. Greenwood marriages were thought of as a lovely union that happened between two or more people for that evening. Or the, as Beltane tends to go, from the night into the day and into the following evening. You stayed, you had breakfast together, we hung out in the park for a while, we exchanged phone numbers, and then I'll see you later. Okay. Truly, though, the Greenwood marriages or Beltane marriages were intended to be one-night stands. They were intended to be a flash, a fire, a moment. And certainly some people got pregnant from that stuff, and there's all sorts of interesting archetypal connections with that. But sometimes people didn't. Plenty of people didn't. Especially people who can't get pregnant, who are having sex at this time of year. Hi. And it really was about this waking the body back up and coming back into vitality and life, and remembering how to use your body again, and remembering other people, and like how to combine with those people and all of that stuff. It really is one of the holidays that is profoundly based on the idea of sacred sex, sacred sensuality, sacred exchange of energy with other being or beings. And sometimes these Greenwood marriages turned into what we would think of as a hand fasting, which is good for a year and a day. And then on that day of the year and a day, you come back to the same place wherever it was that you were hand fasted, and you go, are we good for another year? Yeah, all right, fuck it, let's do it. Or if not, cool, this was awesome, but I'm going to go. It's one of my favorite things about hand fastings is the divorce is kind of built in, or the potential, like we can all change at any time. You never know. So Greenwood marriages, really, really, really big deal. Okay. And how did people find each other for the Greenwood marriages? Well, a couple of different things, but certainly the maypole would have been the most traditional way of finding folks. So let me do this and let me do that. Yeah, it worked. Okay. Is that professional or what? I mean, come on. This is so slick. Put me on the nightly news. All right, don't put me on the nightly news yet. I will say a bunch of controversial stuff. But, Eventually, I do want to be on the nightly news. Okay. So, the maypole. And the maypole is a fantastic symbol, again, for Beltane season. We are seeing a big ol' pole thrusting up out of the ground. And then at the top of a lot of maypoles, there is a ring of flowers. And I've seen this, but I haven't participated in one. If you rig it correctly with all of your streamers of ribbons and things like that that are fluttering down from the top of the pole, as you weave the pole, the ring of flowers will actually come down. So you have this ring of flowers that literally slides down and over the pole. We love. Okay. But the idea is that you have this big old pole set up in the middle of the town square, the middle of the village, the middle of your backyard, or, out at the springs or wherever it is that your Beltane rave party takes place in Eastern Washington or what have you. And then it is decorated with a ton of ribbons and streamers. And you can actually see that in the background of the graphic. That's what is happening back there. It isn't just pure chaos. It's actually a maypole with a bunch of streamers coming out from it. And some folks, some traditions would have all of the kids of the village get on the maypole. Some traditions would have everybody do it. And some traditions would have it be people who are very strictly identified as male or female, and then they would be alternating male and female around the outside, and that's a depiction of that polarity thing that we keep talking about, union of opposites. But plenty of other cultures just had anybody and everybody from the village jump on, and you grab a ribbon, and everybody faces inwards initially, and then every other person faces left, and every other person faces right, and you begin to go. You begin to walk or dance in the direction that you're facing. And what happens is you have an over-under thing that happens between the two people as they pass each other. One person goes under and one person goes over, and then it's under, over. And the effect, which, depending on how many drugs or how many hours people have been awake by the time you get around to the maypole part, you may or may not get this effect, but the idea is that it creates this really incredible woven braid down the pole. And so you have all of these streamers initially, and then all of that energy is being brought in, and really it's sort of worshiping the pole, worshiping this big phallic symbol that's coming up out of the ground. And I think here is a great place for me to pause and note. I do use the word goddess and god a lot. There are plenty of other names for deity and source and all of that stuff. But when I'm saying those words, I am not referring to gender. And I want to make that super, super clear. When I say goddess, what I am talking about is the energy in all people to receive. Remember our symbolism that we're working with, the chalice and the blade. So goddess energy in any person is the ability in you to receive, to call in, to be the fertile ground upon which another thing grows or is produced. The goddess is potential. The goddess is a fertile field waiting for the seed. It is the thing in all of us that is ready to produce a thing. And so clearly there's going to be a lot of goddess type energy here at Beltane season. We're seeing the life come back to planet Earth, and everything is blooming, and all of the animals are out there breeding and doing their thing. And so it really is this celebration of that energy. So goddess energy, that thing in all humans that can be acted upon, that receives, that calls something out from something else, all of that. And then God energy is the energy that is in all humans, regardless of your shape or your gender or your age or whatever, that is the thing in us that wants to act. It wants to be extroverted. It wants to perform. It wants to do upon. It wants to perform upon. It wants to act upon. It wants the result. It wants to be a result. And so, in my metaphor of goddess energy being like a very fertile field, the god energy would be the seeds that are planted in that field, right? Neither one can do its thing without the other. Both important, but both have very distinct jobs. And so, this is also true in us. We have elements of ourselves that want to be extroverted. We want to perform. We want to shine. We want to show off. We want to do. We want to make things happen. We want to produce stuff on the world, and we want to have a physical result or some kind of a result to show. Look, I did it. I made a thing. And then there's also parts of us that want to receive, that want to recede, that are introverted, that are here to witness and here to be acted upon, or here to just be the canvas upon which some other painting happens. So we are talking about the union of these two elements of ourselves. These are not the only elements of ourselves, but they are there, and they're pretty potent, especially here in our current paradigm that we work with. We work with a lot of polarities in this particular paradigm. Good, bad, black, white, yes, no. And so Beltane season kind of sees that polarity stuff and really plays with it and does a lot of magic with it. Okay, so maypole, big dick coming out of the ground, ribbons. All right, moving on. Another symbol that is really, really potent at this time of year, and you are going to hear me say this word over and over again in this class, is flowers. Oh my God, flowers. Flowers, huge. Flowers, big ass, big deal. Because they're blooming everywhere. Everything is blooming. Everything is beautiful. Everything is growing. And so flowers, 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 flowers everywhere. Beltane kind of starts the season of not necessarily having your altar in the house anymore. But if you have the capacity to, if you have a balcony, if you have a like private or covered porch, if you have a backyard, this is definitely the season where it starts to become much more realistic to begin to move your practice outdoors, move your altar outdoors. And so you're not bringing super fancy, the bone saber of Zuma Callus and, all of that stuff out there. You're using the natural world as your altar and as your magical tools. You're working, and I shouldn't say you're using it, you are hopefully working with the natural world for that stuff. So flowers, 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 flowers. Flowers are also very much metaphorically that representation of giving and receiving, those two polarities of the goddess and the god. The flower is blooming, and it's the potential of a piece of fruit or a vegetable at some point is the case with a lot of plants. But specifically, its way of being pollinated, and its way of getting out into the world and propagating itself. So there's something very luscious and very goddess-like about flowers because they're just pretty, they're just here, I'm just being my natural petally self. Oh, did you notice my pollen? That's great. Here's some more pollen. Here's some more pollen. Oh, did I get that all over you? So we love flowers for that dichotomy of being both of those energies. And there's a really cool divinatory practice that is done at Beltane with flowers, and that is going out and picking wildflowers. If you know a little spot where wildflowers grow, go and pick a couple. Don't pick them all. Save some for the next person. But pick one, pick two, pick three, especially the ones that you are attracted to but you don't quite know what it is, and then take them home and look them up. And look up the magic of them. And I would also recommend look up the genus loci of that plant as well. Look at who works with it locally, who works with it indigenously, and see if there isn't maybe some lesson and some work for you in that information as well. But this is a really old, it's a Victorian era tradition, but I think it harkens back to something older than that. Going out, picking some wildflowers, bringing them home and looking them up and seeing what they mean as a form of divination. And it's really quite classic for this time of year. Bonfires. Definitely a really potent, really common symbol for Beltane. And this connects to our protection rites. You can also do divination with fire. So a Beltane bonfire would be more than appropriate to do divination with. but it's also used for protection. And in a bunch of different ways throughout time. You see a bunch of different practices in the pagan world of how bonfires have been used for protection and purification. But very, very normal to have a bonfire built and then let it burn down a bit to where it's mostly just coals and drive cattle through it. Also building 2 bonfires and driving your cattle between the 2 bonfires. Both of these would have been thought as ways of protecting the cattle before they are sent out to pasture and leave the farm for the next several months. A purification ritual. And then everybody else in the village would have done the same thing. Walked over the coals or walked between the 2 bonfires, what have you. Sometimes you see some of the coals are brought into the house and like a fire is started with them, or the coal is allowed to burn out and then there's markings made with the coal, or maybe people are marked with the ashes from the Beltane fire. You see a bunch of different variations of that, taking a little piece of the bonfire and doing something with it as a form of protection at this time of year. So you could look, if that's calling to you, that's something you could definitely look up and see what those traditions are, or just make up your own tradition. Because why not? It's 2020, girl. Let's go. Okay. And then along with bonfires, kind of addendum to bonfire, is the Wicker Man. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Oh my goddess. It's so good. Or watch Midsommar, even though that's actually about Letha. It definitely had a few elements in there that were Beltane-esque. But the Wicker Man is a being, generally thought of as a male being, that is made out of wicker. It's made out of branches and twigs and then burnt. This effigy, this idea, is what is at the center of Burning Man, the massive festival, if you somehow haven't heard of it, massive festival that happens every year in the U.S. I wonder how they're going to do that this year. But it is a very, very, very old pagan ritual. And this also is a form of divination and a form of protection. Many times, how do I want to, in modern times, the way that a Wicker Man is often used is one or more people gather branches and twigs and things like that, and using twine or jute or whatever, they will fashion the twigs into bundles and then tie the bundles together to make a humanoid shape. And then modern witches and pagans will write down things they want to be rid of, things they want to be done with, habits they would like to leave behind, phases of growth that they have outgrown, like whatever it is. And again, this is tying back into our rites of passage stuff, right? So they write down whatever it is that they'd like to let go of, and then they take that parchment or scrap of paper and they tuck it in to the belly of the Wicker Man. And then the Wicker Man is set on fire. And all of that stuff goes up with the flames. It goes up with the smoke and up with the ashes, and it's destroyed. It's disintegrated. Or as I like to think of it, it is dissolved back into its raw energetic form, and it just goes back to source to go be something new. Like, you don't get to be a bad habit anymore. You are just raw energy, and you're going to be something else now. Sorry, we're done. If we look back through time, we see various versions of this holiday or various versions of this ritual form, and we probably have historical evidence of the Wicker Man being built huge, stories high, potentially, that there may have been competition between various villages for who could have the biggest or the tallest Wicker Man. But we also have some historical record of people being tucked inside of the Burning Man or the Wicker Man. Not necessarily just scraps of paper of things that people wanted to get rid of, but actual humans that were ultimately sacrificed. How widespread was that practice? We don't necessarily know. Was it just a region? Was it just during a particular era? We don't have a lot of written records from these groups of people that practice this stuff, so we don't know. But we do have some historical record that would suggest that these things were happening. So if you can get enough wood, and we can get across Lake Washington. No, I'm kidding. All right. Am I? Okay. Mayday. General strike. Anyways, Beltane, Mayday. Wicker Man. This is a great form of divination because we can look into the fire, we can pull things out when we're done, what burnt, what didn't. Protection, because the idea is that we're getting rid of stuff and it's being destroyed and taken off of us and immolated in the fire, transformed. But if and when humans were used as sacrifice during that, those humans would have been scapegoats, and they would have been tied with the sins of the village. They would have been marked in some way. Perhaps people wrote things on parchment or pieces of leather and they were tied to the person. They may have been marked in certain ways, but the idea was that it was thought that the bad luck and the sicknesses and the ills that the village might experience were all put upon this person, and then the person was destroyed inside of the Wicker Man, and or possibly a sacrifice to a goddess or a god to get those desired results. Yeah, so there you go. Wicker Man. And last but not least, in our main symbols for Beltane, genitals. I'm pretty sure we've covered this already, but if we didn't, sex is kind of a big deal with this holiday, and sexual activity and sensual activity. And I keep saying it that way because I know that there are people that don't engage in sex, or they don't engage in sex with other people. So whether you do or not, whether you have sex or not, and whether you have sex with other people or not, that's not in. It is important because of the metaphor of union, but the act in and of itself is important, and it is not important. It really depends on your magical paradigm. If sex is potent for you in your magical paradigm, this is a holiday to jam down on that particular vibe. If sex is not important for you in your magical paradigm, then having sex or sexual contact at this holiday is not the important thing. It is the union between you and what you feel like is your polar opposite, the polarity that's across from you. That is the most important thing. But Taurus is a Taurus season. That's the sign that is predominantly featured during Beltane season. We have multiple signs that we work with, but Taurus takes up a lot of the space. It's an earth sign, and so Taurus is about the body. Taurus wants to deal with the body. It wants to deal with food and sex and pooping and what my armpit smells like and that stuff. So even if you don't practice sex, even if you don't practice sex with other people, I would definitely encourage you to engage in some sensual activity with other people or with yourself. And if even that is not on your radar or a part of your vocabulary, something that really puts the body at the center of the activity. Go get a massage. I don't know if you can right now, but give yourself a massage. Give yourself a spa night. Like, take over the bathroom and like do a 4-hour, 5-hour spa night. Use that delicious face cream that you've been saving for a special occasion. It's now. This is it. Taurus season and Beltane season wants us to come back into the body and back into the flesh. And what better way to do that than to give it something appealing, to draw it in. Use your 5 senses to bring it in. Eating delicious food now is absolutely a Beltane vibed ritual. Like I said, using your delicious, only for special occasions, face or body lotion is totally appropriate right now. Burning that really expensive incense that you only save it, this is the moment. This is what that's for. You've had a bottle of wine sitting in the cupboard for 10 years. It's time. Or whatever it is. Those things that treat the physical body, that give succor and nourishment, but deliciousness to the physical body and lusciousness to the physical body. So yes, sex, yes, sensuality, but also yes to just things that taste good and smell good and feel good and sound good and smell good. Those are all really, really appropriate for us during this time of year. Okay. Do you see how much I have? Okay. And we've already been at this for an hour, for Christ's sake. All right. Christ is not even going to come into this. The main... Do I even want to go there? Yeah, okay. All right. So... okay. Main goddesses and gods from a pagan perspective that you are going to be working with at this time of year. The May Queen, the Maiden. We have the goddess in her triple form as the Maiden, the Mother, and the Crone. The Maiden forms of that archetype. Youthful, naive, brash. Creedy Lad is a Welsh goddess that is certainly appropriate to work with at this time of year. Artemis as well. And then god forms that are really potent to work with from the pagan world would be the Green Man, Jack in the Green, vegetation gods of all kinds. So that's Dionysus and Damuzi and Attis, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Bel or Baal. Like all of these are gods that are very appropriate and very traditional to work with during Beltane season. Okay, so the goddess arc. All pertinent deity aspects are coming into their own power at this time and sitting in their seat of authority, grasping their will, and initiating themselves and each other into deeper levels of interpersonal exchange. So that's kind of my little wrap-up moment there of what we were talking about in the witch's work of union of opposites and rites of passage and all of that stuff. That sitting in their seat of power or authority, grasping their will, so they're coming into their own, that brashness, that bravery, and initiating themselves and each other into deeper levels of interpersonal exchange. Okay. And so, when we look around the planet at other holidays that are happening at this time of year, or as we look back through time at the various versions of pagan holidays that recognize this, that idea of initiating each other is really important. Okay, so as we move through Ostara season, and that was the last 7-ish weeks or so, we're still in the last few moments of Ostara season. Beltane kicks off in 4 days, 3 days, whatever. What we see is a lot of holidays that are dedicated to the fertility of the animal world and the plant world. So it's like, it's all these holidays that sort of recognize goddesses of flowers and like goddesses of the dawn and gods that are like youthful and spry but don't necessarily really know what to do with themselves. And we see a whole collection during Ostara season of marriage holidays where you're witnessing the two main deities or two of the main deities in a pantheon union come together. And during Ostara season, they're often children, or they are the younger version of the goddess or the god, or they are a more abstract version. And it's because the union that is being experienced during Ostara season it's more conceptual, it's more abstract, and it's really more about the planet starting to do its thing and come together and make stuff happen. By the time we get into Beltane season, those union holidays that we're seeing between goddesses and gods are now adult versions of those deities or other deities that are adults, and it's much more about these two are getting married and then knocking boots and then producing result and it's much more about the fertility and the union of that stuff within the human world and all of that stuff. So in a sense we could say it becomes a bit more vulgar or a bit more explicit in terms of that fertility thing that's going on. All right, So as we look around the globe and throughout time, we see cultures all over the Northern Hemisphere participating in rituals and festivals celebrating surging power, fertility, exchanging energy, and opposing systems like sex and death. Like those types of things where we have that polarity thing that's going on. Okay. All right. So other holidays that we are witnessing at this time of year. And I'm just going to kind of run through some stuff and talk about some things. Okay. So on May 30th through May 4th, we see, I'm sorry. I actually don't even want to talk about that right now because there's too much to talk about. Bonadia happens from April 27th through May 3rd. This is also recognizing Floralia in the Roman era. Other holidays that we are seeing on Beltane, celebrated on the same night as Nox or Nox, which is the Night of Pan, another classic green vegetation deity that we're working with. The Night of Pan and the Night of Set, who is a death and boundary and void and chaos deity from Egyptian mythology. And this is recognized by folks that practice Thelema. This is celebrating the ego death through cosmic union with the void. Super casual. I'm just going to have sex with space and completely lose my individual self. I'll be back. Hold my beer. Okay. Other things that are happening on Beltane, the actual same day. Rodanica is a Slavic spring festival. Zaka Day is a Vudan agricultural festival. And of course, as I mentioned before, May Day is also International Workers' Day. My subtitle for that is rioting right for you? And I say, absolutely, just keep 6 feet, but set fire to every dumpster that you see. Okay, so some super potent holidays that we will look at this time of year. Another way, I guess I should say this first, another way of describing Beltane is the Feast of Sacred Marriage, crowning the May Queen and the May King. And this is kind of like an overarching statement for a lot of the different pagan holidays that are happening at this time of year. Nearly all of the pantheistic systems that celebrate the spring midpoint or the start of summer for some folks at this time do so through giant bonfires, sexual or spiritual union between their most important and influential deities, heroes, and archetypes, especially sky and solar gods versus or in conjunction with earth mother goddesses. So lots of sky / solar dude energy plus Mother Earth / mother goddess energy. And this year, Ramadan also happens to fall right on top of Beltane season. I believe it just started 2 days ago, I think, on the 23rd. Okay, so some other holidays that we will see during the Beltane season. Earth Day, that just happened. Side note, I tend to think of Beltane season as not actually starting on the 30th or 1st. I think of it as when the sun moves into Taurus. That would have been the 20th, 19th this year. So I cheat. That's just me. I'm weird. Earth Day, certainly a Beltane-esque holiday. May 5th marks what I call, it's not just me, solar Beltane. And so before, when I was talking about how some holidays move and some holidays don't, Beltane is one of those ones that we think of traditionally from a pagan perspective as like it's always on April 30th, May 1st. That's it. I don't care what's happening. It could be a Tuesday. The sun could be up or down. I don't care. But it does actually mark a degree in our orbit around the sun. And so the actual degree that is in between spring equinox and summer solstice, and that would be us on our orbit moving around the sun from spring equinox through Beltane towards summer solstice, that actual point in our orbit falls on May 5th. And so that is also a perfectly traditional and reasonable time to celebrate this holiday. If the 30th and the 1st, for whatever reason, don't work with you, and you're not too concerned about being in alignment with a lot of like popular witches and all of that stuff, do it on the 5th. Do it on the 4th into the 5th into the 6th, or the 5th into the 6th if you wanted to. Either one of those would be appropriate. But you will be in alignment astronomically with what is happening with our planet in its orbit around the sun. Some other holidays that we see at this time of year, from May 20th to 30th, Grudi Rosno, which is a 10-day Eastern European festival for witches and shamans and soothsayers and others to bless and cleanse their tools, dedicated to the god Rod, R-O-D. So this is a fantastic time, again, to be doing that divinatory work that we're talking about. But also, if you do divinatory work, especially if you do it professionally or as a type of profession, that May 20th to May 30th is a fantastic time to thank and cleanse and bless and rededicate all of your tools that you work with. And I would recommend everything, especially with everything that's going on in our world right now. I expect that your divinatory tools are probably getting a workout. So, bless your tarot cards, bless your astrology books and all of that stuff. But your laptop or your tablet or your PC that you work with, your phone, I certainly see clients through both of these things, and it would be more than appropriate for me to say thank you to these tools because of how much they make possible for me, but to also bless them and dedicate and rededicate them to their purpose, or that purpose in particular. And two other holidays that we see during this time of year are Passover, which is Jewish, which I believe just started on the 19th, and then no, that's a lie. It's not on the 19th. That is a lie. If only I had a book that I had prepared for this actual point, and then I used it at least once. Why didn't I write that down? Well, anyways, Passover, it happens. I'm telling you, just believe me, it does. I believe Passover already began, and Easter also takes place at this time of year. And these are both moving holidays. You can find, because of, they are dictated by the movements of the moon, but after other things have happened. So this thing happens, and then you count so many days of the moon forward, and then you have the holiday or the festival. And Passover and Easter both can be found all the way back in Ostara season, like really, really early in Ostara season, and all the way up through Beltane season. So this year they happen to be in Beltane, but not always. All right, some other things that we see at this time of year. Kaiskanari and Mange le Morts from Voodoo and other Yoruba-land traditions, although I believe this name in particular is from Voodoo or Voodoo. The release of the dead from purgatory and the feeding of the dead. These two nights kick off a multi-week festival held in honor and to appease the dead, culminating with the Feast of Simbi Blanc. And I do not practice this religion, so I don't want to speak on it too heavily, but I do want to educate you that this is another way of dealing with these polarity energies, where these guys are in the heart of all of this spring and sex imagery. These cats are feeding the dead and releasing the dead, and sending them on to whatever comes next for their spiritual path. So again, that idea of that sort of opposition thing between sex and death, like we talked about before. Mother's Day also occurs during this time of year, called Mothering Day in the UK, Earth Mother Day in the Gnostic tradition, Feast of the Three Mothers from Celtic tradition. Yes, this was not just a Hallmark invention. This actually goes back several thousand years. And the celebration of the Tao, which is the mother of the world, by Taoists and other Buddhist systems. You get the idea. This whole season is filled with celebrations around the world acknowledging the universal energy of motherhood. And again, the big and obvious version of that is a human literally getting pregnant and having a baby and doing the stuff. But motherhood is really our ability to gestate a thing to ultimately produce it in the world. Okay. Is there anything else? The Feast of Joan of Arc happens in this time of year as well. Cute. Okay. Okay. We have so much more to cover, and we are not going to get it in the next 40 minutes. Sorry. Welcome to my classes. Okay. So some moon names. We're moving into astronomy and astrology at this point. And some moon names that you will find for the different moons that you experience during Beltane season: flower moon, corn planting moon, milk moon, dragon moon, moon when leaves are bright, bright moon, hare moon. These names come from all over the world. They come from a bunch of different traditions. There are modern pagan moon names, ancient Celtic moon names. A lot of the moon names that we work with in America actually come from the Algonquin Native American tribes or other Native American tribes, but a lot of it comes from the Algonquin. And all of the, anytime we have a full moon in May, it is going to be near the stars of Scorpio or Sagittarius. If the full moon happens during Taurus, the Taurus chunk, it'll be a Scorpio full moon. And if the full moon, or when the full moon is happening during the Gemini chunk of Beltane, it will be a Sagittarius full moon. And then as we roll through June, some various names that we see for the different moons: strawberry moon, hot moon, rose moon, honey moon, lotus moon, windy moon, June berries are ripe, moon of horses. A lot of cool. I love these different names. They're really cool. They're really picturesque as well. And same thing, the full moons in June are always found near the stars of Sagittarius or Capricorn. So June has a lot of Gemini in it. So if we're in Gemini, the full moon is going to be in Sagittarius. But part of June steps into Cancer season, and that is the opposite sign is Capricorn. So the full moon is going to be in Capricorn. The two big constellations that we're working with this time of year are Taurus and Gemini in particular. And in Taurus, we have some pretty potent stars. Aldebaran is probably one of the more infamous fixed stars that is a part of Taurus season. And the Pleiades are also found within the constellation of Taurus. And then for Gemini, also known as the twins, we see Castor and Pollux. And we have a few other as well. But Castor and Pollux are probably the most infamous fixed stars that are associated with the constellation of Gemini. And Castor is the mortal horseman. They were thought of, I guess I should say, as best friends, brothers, you know, those two dudes that hung out all the time and went and rode horses a lot. Yeah. Castor was the mortal horseman and Pollux was the immortal warrior. And they have a lot of really cool back and forth energy between them. I would highly recommend reading about their myths because it's definitely more than we can go into during this class. But it really, really, really gives a lot of substance to Gemini and a lot of the symbology that we work with in Gemini and people who are Gemini. Okay. Wait. Yeah, come on. Okay. So this is our sky guide for the Beltane season. And what we're seeing here is April 19th through May 28th, we have the Eta Aquariids meteor showers, which is great because we have a new moon right now. And we will have a new moon again towards the end of May, right around the 20th, I think, 22nd maybe of May is when the new moon is. And so we will still be in a prime place for catching any of these meteors. April 20th, sun moves into Taurus. April 22nd, we had our new moon at 3 degrees of Taurus. And then on May 5th, we have solar Beltane. May 7th is our next full moon, and this is going to be at 17 degrees of Scorpio, and we'll talk about this in just a second. May 20th, the moon moves into, the sun moves into Gemini, and then it is on the 22nd that we have our next new moon at 2 degrees of Gemini. And I've included the degrees for you so that you can see if this is jiving with anything that's in your natal chart. Again, that's for the astrologers that are out there, anybody that's working with that stuff. Just glance at your chart and see if you have anything at that degree or very, very close to it. You're going to feel a little emphasis during this season. And then June 5th is our last full moon of spring. Yes, we are already that far into the year that we are talking about the last full moon of spring. Kind of freaking out. Okay. And then June 12th is the heliacal rising of the fixed star Algol. And Algol has a little bit of a funky reputation. It is traditionally associated with the sign of Aries, which I'm sure you're saying, like, why are we talking about Aries all the way out into June? Sidereal astrology / astronomy / I need to just teach a class on it because it's a little confusing, but what we see in tropical astrology is not exactly what is physically happening in the sky above us. Oh my God. Okay. Don't tell anybody. Oh yeah, other things that are happening this time of year, the Danish stork migration and the North American crane migration are happening. Very cool air sign symbolism there. Okay, so I'm going to read to you a bit. This is the part where I realized that I talked about that stuff too much, and now I need to get to this other stuff, and we're going to race through it, and it's going to be great. Okay. Astrology. The sun travels through Taurus. We begin to truly revel in the physical world, drinking it in. Focus moves from discovering our will to discovering our body and reveling in the beauty and the wonder of the physical world. We begin to stabilize what we initiated at Ostara season. And now we're still in spring, we're still planting seeds, we're still experimenting, but we're getting a little bit more serious about our experimenting. We're adding a little bit of stability to the things that we have been experimenting with. We're going to really, really commit by the time that we hit Letha and we hit summer solstice. We kind of have to leave the experimentation phase behind and be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. But for now, we're still there, but we're getting a little bit more serious about our experimentation. Okay. So, new moon in Taurus. Now, I realized that was the 22nd. I apologize. I was supposed to teach this class on the 22nd or 23rd. I'm sorry. This life is weird sometimes. However, we are still within the 2 weeks of the Taurus new moon. So, it is still totally appropriate to do all of your new moon work if you do any of that type of stuff. New moon in Taurus, focus on your relationship with nature and the physical world. What is destroyed so that you might live? And what a potent thing to consider at this time of year. What is destroyed so that you might live? What physical things in your world are manifesting to signal spring? And if you haven't, safely, gloves, mask, all of that. Take a walk around your neighborhood and go and look at what is blooming, and you will see the natural world is like, bitch, I'm here. It's time. Let's go. We're doing it. All right. And then 2-ish weeks from now, we are going to have the full moon in Scorpio. And I encourage you to sit with nature's cycles of death and rebirth. Witness the power nature embodies as it moves and breathes. Witness the messiness and the organic imperfections of reality. Can you feel what is moving beneath the ground? That's really potent with that Scorpio energy here in the heart of Beltane and Taurus season, right? It's life, it's vitality, it's all of that, but there's always something in the underground. There's always something in the undercurrent there. Okay. And then the sun is going to move into Gemini. Okay. So this is a month from now or so, and this will cover the last 4-ish weeks of Beltane season. Like I said, Beltane season is long. It's a big chunk of time. Now that we are back in touch with our bodies and want to go outside again, not necessarily with each other, it's time to meet everyone. Hi, Zoom meetings. Think all the thoughts and generally try to do everything. Focus moves from stimulating the body, okay, give the Hitachi a rest, to stimulating the mind. So invest in some crosswords. Okay. The new moon in Gemini, we indulge in spontaneous conversations, trips, hookups, catch as catch can in the modern era, and investigative rabbit holes, mostly without any kind of agenda. We just want to know stuff, just knowing to know. And then the full moon in Sagittarius, and this is way out towards the middle of June, we consider, this is the full moon in Sagittarius, we consider the sources of knowledge. We consider who we might mix with that inspires trust and camaraderie, like they're actually part of our fraternity, the people who just get us. And so this really speaks to a lot of the Gemini energy that we're talking about, and kind of going back to that imagery of Castor and Pollux, of these two men who were best friends, so much so that they were thought of as brothers. They, in some cultures, were definitely thought of as lovers. I think it's very, very potent that we're dealing with the idea of twins, but it's two men together during June. It's Pride season. Hello. That's beautiful and clearly ancient. But it's really a fun play with this polar opposite, similarity opposite thing, right? Gemini is a twin, but it's still a union of two things, right? And so in Beltane season, or in Taurus season during that, we're looking at things that are visibly the opposite coming into union. And then during Gemini season, we're looking at things that are on the surface appearing to be the same, but also coming together and having this union or this marriage or this thing that's created by that. Okay. Where the energy of Ostara encourages us to initiate and explore, Beltane wants us to open our petals wide and engage, intensify, and exchange. It wants us to make real the possibilities glimpsed last season. This is an earthy sign that wants to act on the chaste passions of Ostara. It is a wonderful time to start building, planting, constructing in the real world. Something. Anything. And Beltane wants to get physical. However you experience sensuality, and we've talked about this already, however you experience sensuality, let yourself submerge in these powerful emotions and feelings. As we move into spring, we begin to transition away from the warrior stance of Aries into the luscious, organic, flowing, relaxed moods of spring. After the initial buzz wears off, begin to refine your trajectory. Instead of just thrusting out into the world at your goals, try swishing to beckoning them. to you. So get the metaphor there, right? We're talking about our cup and our chalice, and we all have them. So one part of me is going out into the world to go get what I want, and another part of me is sitting back and calling the world to me and saying, this is what I want. Who's going to bring it to me? How can I make myself more of a chalice to receive? And then our thrust portion is, where do I have to go? How hard do I have to go? Where else? What else? Who else? More. Here I am. Here's my thing. Get it? Okay. Beltane is not just about sex and sensuality specifically. It's about the exchange of energies between ourselves and different people, places, ideas, states of being, etc. It's about rubbing up against new and divergent stuff and getting it on you and seeing what that's like. It's pollinating and getting pollinated. As we move into the second half of Beltane, we get to some of the excess energy out of our systems, we can get back to the business of being gods and doing cool stuff with a purpose, right? So at the beginning of spring, we're just like, ah! And then like when we hit Beltane, we hit Taurus season, it's like, oh, okay, what was I saying? All right, somebody has to go to the store and get more ice. This party is huge. Okay. That's Beltane season. Like, all right. Let's try to get this under control. We get some of that excess energy out of our systems, and we can get back to the business of being gods and doing cool stuff with a purpose. TM. Check out your horoscope. That would be your natal chart. And look at the house your natal moon is in. I always say this. As well as the houses that Taurus and Scorpio are in, as well as Gemini and Sagittarius. These 4 places, but particularly the Taurus and Gemini sections, are really going to have some emphasis for you this season. It's going to have emphasis for everybody, where everybody has Taurus and Gemini somewhere in their chart. So we're going to have that emphasis no matter what. But we will all have different houses there. And the houses really speak to the very specific part of your life. And so that's very specific part of your life is going to have a little more emphasis this season just because of all the activity that's going on up in the sky. Okay. And then as you work through these moons, I have some journaling entry suggestions and meditation suggestions for you. Okay. So, during Taurus season, or during the lunar cycle of Taurus, we begin to really live in our bodies and here in the physical world. The inner journey of winter has a dim memory. Okay, so new moon in Taurus, like I said, that's already passed a couple days ago, but we still really got 2 weeks of the new moon, so you can do this at any time. I recommend trying this for a meditative exercise. Describe your relationship with the physical plane. Who or what are you? And then also, who or what are you in an attract-repulse relationship with? That could be kind of heady, but, you're brave. You've got this. I believe in you. So think about what you're in an attract-repulse relationship with. And can you imagine any other paradigms? Can you imagine another way of being with that thing? Can you imagine of being in an attract-repulse with other stuff? Or could you imagine something altogether different from being in an attract-repulse relationship with it? And then the full moon in Scorpio. Consider the life, death, rebirth archetype. What does it mean to you? And how are sex and death alike? And there is, a billion words written, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and everything else about sex and death and what are they and how are they the same and how are they different. So read some stuff if you feel engaged or encouraged to do that. But I would recommend also just kind of investigating in yourself and seeing what comes up for you. And then during the Gemini lunar season, we move past the immediate physical world and begin to establish ourselves in the mental and social realms. And so on the new moon in Gemini, go meet your community. And obviously, we are under some pretty significantly different conditions than what we would normally experience at this time of year. But that doesn't mean that you can't still participate in, 6 feet apart, meet you on the corner, let's drink a 6-pack of beer. Go out and talk to your neighbors, wave at them from across the patio or whatever. If anything, with the restrictions on gathering and the restrictions on having a communal experience with your community, right? It's sort of almost stressed even more so that we really strive and try to reach out and make some kind of a connection with each other. So this is really, really well supported on that new moon in Gemini. And that's about a month from now. Go meet your community. Join in some of those weekly Zoom meetings, or cocktail parties, or talking about your favorite TV show or whatever it is. But also, I would definitely recommend going out and actually, from a safe distance, saying hi to your neighbor that you've never said hi to before, all of that kind of stuff. It's really potent and important, I think. And then, and this will probably be really easy, list 3 socially oriented things that you've been wanting to do but you haven't tried yet. Will your first impressions be friendly, flirty, or something else? So thinking about going out and doing those social things, and who will you be in that place? How many different hats might you want to wear? Do you want to present yourself in a way you haven't before? All of that stuff. And then in the full moon in Sagittarius, list 3 fundamental sources of wisdom you trust that were handed to you. So we're talking a little bit about, or talking more about traditions versus like things that have come up just strictly from your intuition, but traditions that you were taught, whether they're philosophical or spiritual or religious traditions that you were taught or that you were handed by a family member or a community member or something that you were, inducted into, anything along those lines. Okay. Now, some good stuff. All right. Let's do this, and then I go here. Bam, bam, bam. There we are. All right. Tarot helpers for Beltane season. During Beltane season, I strongly recommend working with the Hierophant and the Empress. The other 2 tarot cards that you very easily could work with at this time of year would be the Magician and the Lovers. And that is going to be for the Gemini portion of the season. And then, if you really want to pile it on, the 3 other tarot cards that I would recommend working with are the 5, 6, and 7 of Pentacles. Long story long, astrological signs take up 30 degrees, and they are divided into 3 chunks of 10 degrees, and those chunks of 10 are called decans, and some magical systems have ascribed the minor arcana cards to correspond to those decans. There is not one way to do this. There's multiple theories on what cards connect with what decans. What I'm using is probably the most popular or the most common way of doing it, and I do that because it will be easy for you to find information on it if you're intrigued and want to know more. Okay, so I'll let you guys look at that actually, just so you can really focus on these cards. Moving through the energy of spring, we come upon the Empress and the Hierophant. Hey, Hiero. What? We just... Both figures, while very official, are ultimately concerned with the well-being of the group. Their efforts manifest in the real world, with real consequences. The Empress wants us to feel beautiful and lush and sexy and happy and fed. And the Hierophant wants to keep us connected to paternal traditions that keep us aligned with the values of the group, marching along in a happy, smoothly functioning society. Their core teachings offer us a doorway into a place where we can hear our inner voice and activate our inner guiding compass by learning from the past and past traditions of teaching, as well as the natural rhythms of nature. But those paradigms can feel very claustrophobic or alienating. What if we have problems with traditional forms of order and trust issues around old structures of power? What if we don't feel like we have access to the lush beauty and body-centric reality that seems relegated to the realms of the beautiful people? What if our bodies or our soul's rhythms don't seem to match our peers? The politics of the body and the politics of social hierarchy can feel like a dividing force, and it strikes at the core of our feelings of self-worth. In this season, we will be asked to play several parts in a story about inclusion, exclusion, and the karma created around those interactions. Sit with it. Feel in yourself who wants attention. Consider what you get out of life when you feed and build with these various selves, or when you don't. Listen to what your heart has to say about worthiness, about feeling excluded. Where do we allow traditional thinking to conform us? And when is that okay? And when is it not? Can we see the nature of the things we have built in our lives? What is true success or victory in our lives? And at the heart of it all, we must have a passionate yearning for the thing, or it won't matter. Okay, so let's talk about these two archetypes for a second. The Hierophant has a pretty gnarly reputation, and I gotta be honest, he kind of deserves it. I am about to, for my patrons, tiny ad, for my patrons, last year I wrote a epic piece on this, and this year I'm going to post it on my website for everybody else. So if you're a patron, you get to read this stuff a year in advance. Hooray! Okay. The Hierophant, as we work with them in the tarot, really relates to characters like the Pope and kings and dictators, and thanks, but we've kind of had enough of that. Like, for like a couple thousand years, we've had, we're full up, thanks. And so the Hierophant is an archetype just exists. They're totally neutral, but how an archetype is used can result in that archetype giving us the willies, or it has a really gnarly reputation, or we are repelled or attracted. We're like, oh, I don't want to deal with you. You're gross. And so the Hierophant really relates to a lot of those power structures that currently, most of the time that we see them or that we interact with them, it's really gross. It's really yucky. It is power of the few over the safety and the health and the well-being of the many and all of that bullshit. But at the root of the Hierophant, what we are talking about is an archetype that represents a maturing energy in us that says, okay, the visions that we got during Aries season and the visions that we got during the Ostara season, that was a lot of like, woo, wouldn't this be fun, blah, 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 kind of stuff. And then Taurus and the Hierophant roll in to be like, totally, but like, we need to have a plan. Aries and the beginning of Ostara season is like, let's build a pyramid. Zero idea what that means, though. Like, no idea how to actually accomplish that. Just have a great idea. Totally excited about it. Woot. The Hierophant rolls in and goes, okay, well, we're going to need 50,000 loads of bread. We're going to need, trucks to haul in the stone. We're going to need, 40, 50,000 people carving. That means, where's the beer factory going to go? We got to figure that out. That's what the Hierophant does. And how the Hierophant makes those decisions is it usually harkens back to, what did my dad do? Meaning, what did the founding people do before me? How was the last pyramid built? Oh, okay, well, we'll go with that. There's a type of security in these traditional structures, and that's the Hierophant is saying, I'm relying on that security. I'm relying on what we already know is going to work. I'm taking your whack-ass vision, and I'm going to make it go, and I'm going to make it good. I'm going to make it actually, manifest and function and do something. But the Hierophant can get really, really, really bogged down in rules and regulations. And a person, a human, that is in this role of the archetype of the Hierophant can forget sometimes that they're just a stand-in. They forget sometimes that they are just doing a job on behalf of, source, deity, whatever. And Hierophants can often conflate themselves with the energy that is moving through them. And so we can kind of have, a back and forth with ourselves in this place of somebody's got to take control. Oh, I took control. I made this happen. Versus I just led people to success. And the thing with the Hierophant is when the Hierophant defaults to de-evolved or less evolved behaviors, the Hierophant clamps down. The Hierophant goes for rules. The Hierophant goes for structure. The Hierophant goes for whatever, like I said, whatever has already worked before, and they will prefer to clamp down and say no and shut things down and become structured and rigid around things. Versus the Empress. And the Empress is related to the planet Venus. Venus is the ruling planet of Taurus, and so that's why I think that these two are really great to work with. The Empress also wants to see you build your pyramids. The Empress is also really super stoked on all your great ideas that you had during Ostara season and is like, absolutely, bitch, we're totally going to do this. And then the Empress hangs out, sits down, pulls up a comfy chair, busts out, an Arnold Palmer frosty glass of iced tea and lemonade or whatever, and just relaxes and kicks back. And you're like, what are you doing? And the Empress says, I'm allowing the natural order to work, to do its thing. That tomato plant knows how to grow. I don't need to yell at it and tell it how to grow. These peas are going to climb up this vine. They already know how to do that. I don't have to tell them anything. I'm just going to kick back. And every now and then I'm going to notice, oh, you need a little water. Oh, you're getting too much shade. We should pull you more out into the sun. And then I'm just going to stand back and let stuff happen. So the dichotomy here is how to learn to wrangle your great ass ideas and give them some structure. That's the Hierophant's job. While at the same time staying relaxed enough to allow things to also function within their own organic order, their own natural order. So this, for the self, for your own person, would be, I had these great ideas, and I know that I've got to create a structure to manifest those ideas, but the way that I do that isn't necessarily going to be the way that other people do it. I know I need a structure, but I need my structure. I need my natural, organic way of doing things. Because again, what gardener goes out into the garden and yells at the tomatoes that they're not growing fast enough? You are a crazy person. Stop that. Don't do it. You're mean and you're wrong. Those tomatoes don't care either way, honestly. And the Empress isn't perfect. If the Empress has a de-evolved side, it's that this is the portion of us that wants to just hang out in a velvet frock and eat delicious food on a embroidered couch and, smoke opium or like drink the best of fruit juices from around the world or whatever and never do anything at all. We want to just enjoy the moment. We just want to be here in the luscious physical world and be luscious and enjoy lusciousness and just, yeah. But nothing's ever going to get done that way either. We do need some of the structure that the Hierophant provides. So, another way that these two characters are described in tarot is the physical mother and father of the soul. And so we can really see these two as sort of overseeing production and manifestation here on the physical plane. I had a bunch of great ideas, but without any structure, I'm not going to get them done. However, if I'm just a frickin' bully to myself and I'm only hollering, well, my dad said it had to go a certain way, then I'm not going to, I'm going to freak myself out and I'm just going to go hide with a bottle of wine under a cypress tree. Bye. So this season is a really great time to juggle back and forth and to learn between these two forms of function, to like find the middle path between them. How do I bring in some structure, but I respect my own organic modes of functioning? How do I do these things? Okay, so that's those guys. Last but not least, this isn't last. Typical, we're going to run over. So sorry if you have somewhere to be, but, get cozy. We won't run over too long. Some notes on the Bull of Heaven. This is another part that I'm just going to read to you. Please enjoy. The constellation of Taurus is huge and may have reached all the way back to Pisces at one point in history. We know humans have been working with this constellation for over 6,000 years. And it has marked the vernal equinox from approximately 4,300 BCE to 2000 BCE. But it's not the oldest record of humans venerating this creature. The earliest evidence we have of bull worship is at the famous archaeological site Katul Hayuk. Göbekli Tepe and Katul Hayuk, my heart is in you. In eastern Anatolia, now Turkey, from approximately 9,000 years ago, great sets of horns are embedded in fire pits and massive red bulls are painted on the walls. I want to go see it so bad. Often called the Bull of Heaven, the sacred bull deities are depicted as both solar and lunar in various cultures. The word Ka, K-A, in Egyptian means both life force and bull. Apis, A-P-I-S, Apis, was an Egyptian bull god, the son of Hathor, we love, and was sacrificed and reborn yearly and became a go-between for humans and other deities. Crete had their own renowned bull dances, with players grasping the bull's horns and leaping over them, and Manoa had their infamous minotaur skulking in his labyrinth. And of course, the myths and pieces of history that we have that go along with those things. Rabbit hole, y'all! Okay. Shiva has Nandi the sacred bull as his chariot and protector. The name Nandi, N-A-N-D-I, Nandi comes from the Tendil word nandu, which means to flourish, to appear, or to grow. In Sanskrit, Nandi means joy, happiness, and fulfillment. In Hebrew, ox is represented by the first letter in the alphabet, Aleph. It is one of the four creatures depicted as the archangels, representing Earth. Bulls also often are associated with the ideas of connections, unifiers, bridges, or something upon which another thing relies for support. We could say union, definitely in that place too. White buffaloes are revered as sacred omens of great change by many native North American tribes. Moses of the Old Testament, who was often depicted with ram's horns, the astrological sign immediately preceding Taurus, specifically forbade the worship of golden calves, which the locals seemed very fond of. There was a Syrian deity named Baal, B-A-A-L, who was a bull god who ruled over the sky, lightning, and fertility. Baal, or Bel, was also a title that meant owner, lord, or master, but many gods of this time and region had the prefix Baal or Bel, like Baal Shamin, a sky deity, Baal Haman, a weather god who oversaw vegetation and was connected to the Egyptian Ammon, or Baal Karnain, the two-horned god. He had a temple that stood at Palmyra in Syria until the terrorist group ISIL destroyed it in 2015. Moloch was another infamous bull god. His name relates to a few interesting words like the Hebrew milk and the Akkadian malku, which both mean king. It is also connected to names like Malcolm and Melkart. And I'm just going to roll back really quickly to that Baal section, or Beltane. Kuyutha is the cosmic bull in medieval Islamic cosmology. It is said to carry on its back the angel who shoulders the world and the rock platform upon which the angel stands. The bull is said to stand on the giant fish or whale, Bahamut, which of course connects linguistically to Baphomet as well as Tiamat. One significant feature that is nearly universal is that these creatures are often depicted as stark white or shining, and many myths surround a white bull, buffalo, or a cow. All right, so last bits of stuff, because it's 9:01, so we're going to get through this last little bit pretty quick. We're going to move into some of our references. So, if you are planning on doing a ritual, planning on making an altar of some kind for Beltane season, blah, blah, blah. I guess, side note, let me say this. There's a piece about this on my Patreon. But when exactly do we do stuff? When is the appropriate time? I want to be in alignment with the important date. When's the important date? Like I said, April 30th, May 1st is the most traditional, especially for modern pagans, all the way into May 5th, if we want to be astronomically aligned with stuff. I kind of think of Beltane season as already having started as the sun moves into Taurus, because Tauresian imagery and vibes are so potent for this season. So you have some leeway here in terms of when exactly it is that you would like to do some type of a festival. And Beltane rituals, Beltane celebrations, Beltane festivals, for me, I think of them as being bigger and being more of a period of time versus an individual event. The solstice and the equinox are like, this is the day that thing is happening, and it's not going to happen any other day. So if we're doing it, we probably should do it in alignment with the sun's movements. But these days, these other 4 holidays are a little bit looser, exactly, and they are also more important, we could say, or have tended to be more important. And so the more important holidays we often see celebrated as week-long or multi-week-long festivals anyways, because everybody's got to get in, get settled, and then party for a few days, and then get out. Any time in the next couple of weeks really is appropriate to, if you do participate in building altars and doing that stuff now, anytime, you're fine. Okay. Beltane altars are traditionally some of the plainest altars in the whole year, because in a perfect situation, your practice is moving outside into the real church, nature. However, we don't all have a forest or an ocean or a mountain in our backyards that we can go to whenever we want. So we need to bring that riotous growth energy into our homes and try to evoke some of the feeling of wildness. The altar should have some branches of greenery with flowers to welcome in the continuing energy of the season. Lay a deep verdant green cloth over the altar. It's also great to include any and all other colors of the growing season, and rainbows in particular are very appropriate for Beltane altars. You can also bring these colors in with just flowers. You can use food, candles, stones. One of my favorite things is original art. I love getting out the pastels or the watercolors and just making something really big and messy that feels like the season. Let's see. It should be loose and free and natural. Those would be the things that I really recommend about making an altar for this season, is that it's organic, it's natural, it's free, it's loose. We see other sabbats and altars that kind of want a structured rigidity to them. They're like, you got to put the candle just right here. We're only using these symbols. Beltane, it's like, bitch, put it all on the altar. Let's do it. The only other element that is traditionally included is a cauldron. And if you are not able to dance around a giant bonfire somewhere, your cauldron will be your stand-in. So burn a candle in it. Red, white, orange, yellow, pink, any of these, bright green, any of these colors would be totally appropriate for Beltane. The red, white, orange, or yellow to represent the sun. And as a symbol of union. And so what you can do is, pro tip here, take some aluminum foil and line the inside of your cauldron before you melt the candle. One, it will catch the wax so you do not ruin your cauldron, or now that cauldron is for that forevermore. It will do that, and also the aluminum foil will reflect back a bunch of the light, and so it becomes much brighter than just the individual flame of the candle. Some other common elements that you might include on your altar would be something to represent the goddess, something to represent the god, something to represent the four elements, earth, air, fire, and water. And there are traditional layouts for altars, but as I always say, I highly recommend your own intuition as to how to create an altar and where to lay stuff out. Okay, so some stuff that I would recommend working with this season. Frankincense, rose, geranium, myrrh, and benzoin are all really appropriate scents to burn at this time of year, or essential oils to work with if you want to, however you would like to work with them. These are all relatively easy to find. Your local incense shop should certainly have nearly all of these in a stick, or an essential oil, or a resin that you could burn on a piece of charcoal. These are all super appropriate. Rose aligns with a Taurus energy. Geranium aligns a little bit more with Aries, but Aries into Taurus, and actually it kind of aligns with Gemini as well. Benzoin definitely aligns with Gemini vibes. Myrrh is here to bring in that femininity, quote unquote, that goddess energy that we're talking about, that receptivity. And frankincense and myrrh are a very, very classic symbol of that union thing. Isn't it an interesting coincidence that the Catholics burn it? Okay, moving on. Some very traditional symbols that we work with here at Beltane. The bull, obviously. Dove, and you will actually see a dove on the Empress tarot card. She has a shield down by her feet. A camel is also a traditional symbol of this time period. A boar or other types of pigs. And an ox, obviously, for the Taurian bull cow vibes. These are all very traditional, and you will see them used in a lot of different places. A lot of different belief systems use these different symbols to represent this season and its energy. Can everybody see these okay when they're this small? Should I make them bigger? All right. Food and drink that is appropriate for this time of year. Flowers, flowers, flowers. Any edible flowers are so appropriate to eat at this time of year. If it is all possible for you to get edible flowers, or to include flowers in your ingredients of whatever it is that you're making, your drinks, your food. If you smoke, whether you smoke cannabis or you smoke tobacco, whatever it is, or you smoke herbal blends, rolling them in rose petals. And I happen to have a small discussion on my website about this and a little video. Rolling them in rose petals instead of a piece of paper is sexy, it's gorgeous, it tastes good, and it's very, very appropriate for this season. Oatmeal cakes, honey, almonds, seeds, and lentils. These are all very appropriate. We see this type of stuff used in uh, rituals and fertility festivals throughout time. And as I always say, if something really spikes you and we didn't spend a lot of time on it, send me an email. I'm happy to answer questions because we're definitely not doing things in the normal way right now. But also, I always encourage you, go research this. Type in to Google or whatever, Beltane ritual oatmeal cakes, Beltane ritual flowers, Beltane ritual honey, Beltane ritual almonds, or Beltane season, that type of thing, and see what comes up for you. You may find things that I didn't find. Some stone helpers that we love working with, or that I love working with at this time of year, and I actually brought a couple of them to class for us to share. Some rose quartz. Come on, rose quartz. Let's get it. This is super, super Taurian, super, super Venus energy with rose quartz. And so this is also really appropriate to work with during Libra season, which Libra is also ruled by Venus. But rose quartz, very appropriate to work with. Copper, very, very appropriate to work with for our Taurus vibes. What else do we have over here? Emerald, this is some raw emerald, very, very appropriate. All of these align with Taurus, emerald, Taurus into Gemini. Green tourmaline, a little piece of green tourmaline with some mica here. Also Taurus into Gemini. All of the barrels are ruled by, or nearly all of the barrels are ruled by Gemini. Selenite is another stone that's very appropriate to work with at this time of year. And salt, and in particular, that pink Himalayan salt is very, very appropriate to work with at this time of year. And I don't know if I have this listed anywhere, but beeswax, connecting to that honey thing, but beeswax is very appropriate to work with during Beltane season. So beeswax candles in a Himalayan salt candle holder, you are dialed in, my friend. You don't even need anything else on your altar. You are good to go. What else do we have? Plant helpers, and obviously these can be foods or plants. Apples, flowers, daisies, rowan, which is if you go outside and you see those like super neon peridot green buds that are on the trees, it's almost always a rowan tree. And rose, again, very appropriate. And so again, we can be bringing these things in and putting them on our altars. We can be wearing them as essential oils, burning them as incenses. The ones that are safe to work with, we can have as food, putting them in drinks, all of this stuff. And that brings us to the end. Oh my God, really? Oh my God, we're done. Okay, so last thing, and then I will let you go. Thank you so much. Okay, two more things, and then we're done. I swear to God. Okay, two more things. I am going to read to you a poem, and then I am going to give you some meditations to use during your Beltane ritual, if you like, and then we will be done. Okay, running over just a little bit. Sorry. All right. This is the Prayer of the Horned God by Amergin, Bard of the Milesians. I am a stag of 7 tines. I am a flood across a plain. I am a wind on a deep lake. I am a tear the sun lets fall. I am a hawk above the cliff. I am a thorn beneath the nail. I am a wonder among flowers. I am a wizard. Who but I sets the cool head aflame with smoke? I am a spear that roars for blood. I am a salmon in a pool. I am a lure from paradise. I am a hill where poets walk. I am a boar, ruthless, red. I am a breaker, threatening doom. I am a tide that drags to death. I am an infant Who but I peeps from the unhewn dolmen arch? I am the womb of every holt. I am the blaze on every hill. I am the queen of every hive. I am the shield for every head. And I am the tomb of every hope. All right. Last but not least, these are your meditations to work with during Beltane season. If you want to work with them during an actual Beltane ritual, you're welcome to. If you want to come back to these throughout the season and work with this material, either way, both, it's all good. How can you bring more pleasure into your life? How does your sexuality contribute to your vitality? Think on the things that bring beauty into your life and how you bring beauty into the world. Describe 5 things about yourself that are unique or beautiful. And last but not least, when you hear the phrase, the dance of life, what do you think? And where do you feel it? That's it. It's Beltane season. Find something or someone, hump them, get consent, obviously. But it's Beltane season, and then, oftentimes that's enough. Thank you so much for joining me for this. Thank you so much for joining me for this experiment. I really am trying to learn how to do this in this new way, and I'm excited about the graphics. I'm excited about being able to show you more graphics. If you want more of this material, please join my Patreon. It is my Patreons and my students who bought packages for this year that made it financially feasible for me to be able to do these last 2 classes for free. It really felt right intuitively for me to do these classes for free. And so thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you so much to my students who coughed up the dough and made it happen. If you would like to be a part of that, join my Patreon. There is a ton of stuff that you get. You'll get these graphics every week. And as well as a bunch of other stuff. There's lots of free perks, there's lots of extras, but lots of writing. Soon enough, podcasts and videos are coming, promise. It's a lot of my long form writing. It's a lot of the stuff that I alluded to in here but can't get to in the scope of this classroom. 2 hours is a lot, and we've been going for almost 2.5. So thank you for your patience. It's okay if you have flatlined by this point. You're not the only one. But yeah. The other thing that I always here, I said I was done, but we're not. See here, there's always more. Forms of observance: running between 2 bonfires or jumping a fire, burn a wicker man, but wander through nature. If you have any opportunity to do that at all, if there's any way for you to do it safely at all, go outside, witness the shift, smell the air, smell the ground, look at the plants, look at Earth, be with it, be with her, him, them, it, they, and witness it. Don't just, oh my God, this is so awesome. Sit, be quiet, and witness it. Look at the bugs, look at the birds, look at it, smell it, like be in it and really, really witness it. That's easily, far and away, the most potent thing that you can do as a ritual form in any Sabbat ever is to go witness the natural world. Singing to the dawn, circling a maypole, braiding flowers in your hair, giving flowers, decorating and gifting flowers. Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite things. A Beltane thing that a lot of people will do is you can make a little basket, fill it with flowers, and then leave them on your neighbor's door. You might spritz them down with alcohol first or whatever. But, and don't say anything. Just like, haha, secret flowers, woo, must have been a fairy. Hanging a rowan branch over your door, washing in or scrying in May morning dew. Sex and sensuality, especially near your plants. If you have a garden or if you have a way of getting down next to your house plants, do it. They'll love it. It's really, really good for them. Making offerings to the local spirits, also very appropriate at this time of year. Dressing in bright colors. Let's go. Brew some mead, all of that stuff. And I will leave you with this. These little prints. This is some of my art that I have made over the years for the different holidays. This one was for Beltane of last year. The ones I did this year were super stark black and white. They looked really cool as well. This one's like a bright gold and really chaotic colors behind it. But this is a way of expressing the energy, is by making your own thing and doing it. Okay, that's it. If this was amazing and you watched for free, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. If it's at all within your capacity to donate, I have a Venmo address below in the description. My Patreon Connect is down in the description as well. If you would like the PDF, I guess I should have said this at the beginning of the video. Sorry. If you would like the PDF, not this whole spiral bound, but just the chunk that is for Beltane, you can buy the PDF. That's down in the description as well. And that's it. Blessed be. Happy Beltane. Thank you so much for joining me and joining all of us. And now this is the actual official I'm done thing. I think this is the actual official goodbye. Wait, no, I'm kidding. We're done. We're done. Mwah! Thank you so much. Love you guys. I'm so glad you were here. This was awesome. Good night. Bye.